So, 2020 Moab 240 champion, Michele Graglia. Congratulations, man.
Thank you so much, Billy.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here with you.
We're a couple of days removed from the race. I guess first question that comes to mind is like, how do you feel, man?
I'm still on cloud nine, and I still have to understand and process what happened.
Yeah.
Too many emotions, so intensely packed in those 2.5 days. I don't have any words to express it properly. Too much.
Well, how does the body feel today?
The body feels exceptionally well, I gotta say. I mean, like, of course there are those tight and sore areas, few blisters and stuff. They still need to work their way through, but no, overall I'm feeling pretty good.
So nothing mechanical, no mechanical issues, and nothing broke down over the course of 240 miles?
Well, no, I had a pretty big setback around 210 miles in. Started having a pretty, I don't think I snapped it, but definitely pulled my right Achilles. And so that kind of set me back a little bit. I was expecting to finish a little bit ahead of the time that I did, but overall I cannot complain. I kind of hobbled the last 30 miles,
yeah, which
was like a little bit of a torture, like a death march, but I think it's all part of the game. You don't know what's going to happen out there, and you just pull through no matter what.
Yeah, I feel like the longer the race gets, the more apt or the more inclined like a problem, especially a minor problem, can really flare up and
absolutely,
expose itself.
Like the overuse and the running on so many different types of terrains. Because we went from deep sands to like flowery sands to hard red rock, sandstone, and everything in between. So the body definitely, the joints definitely took the toll. I'm very happy because everything kind of held up well throughout, and then one uphill, I honestly I went in with a record in mind, and 210 miles in we were right on pace, and I was almost sure we was gonna get it. And on this uphill I was pushing probably a little too hard, and on a push off of a rock I felt it like a pinch, and said that unfortunately slowed me down to almost a crawl. But again, it is what it is. It's part of the adventure. You never know what's gonna happen out there, and you deal with it.
Well, a win is a win is a win, man.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So where does this rank? I know you've done a very varied amount of races and different terrains, different distances.
Yeah.
Where does this win for you rank in the resume of races that you've competed against?
Well, I am in awe with this nature. Like I love mountains, I love deserts, I love everything, but this particular part of the world is so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And I would say it's probably the most intensely packed experience of my life. Just because of everything that went through in those hours. Has been so much, with no rest, no sleep. I slept 0 minutes in those 60 hours. I stopped only like 5-10 minutes at each station. In hindsight, of course, I would strategize better next time. It was the very first time that I pushed myself to that extent in one push. And so, I had definitely learned a lot. I understood a lot of our physiology in terms of like nutrition and rest and all of that. So, for future races, if I ever give another crack at the distance, I would definitely make a few minor changes that I think in the end will play a huge role. Because even 15 minutes sleep, 15 minutes power nap in the middle of the night can really recharge you. Yeah, you stop in 15 minutes, but then maybe you make up an hour or two after, instead of dragging throughout. To me, it was very much like a test, figuring out if I could stay up for 60 hours straight, which is already in itself a pretty big challenge. And then, staying up 60 hours straight running, that was quite an experience, I gotta tell you. Like, I heard about people talking about hallucinations and stuff like that, and I'm like, we kind of understand it in 100 milers, things happen and you get some sort of visual things if you're pushing hard enough, but man, it's real. Like, I'm like, those things, like, you know, it was funny cracking up with the Pacers, because, you know, they were like, especially the last couple of sections where they truly helped me, you know, pull through. I like, sometimes I stop, I'm like, what are the people doing there? And then gnomes, and then giraffes in the forest, and then the last stretch right, you know, alongside the Colorado River. I was running, I'm like I swear there was a blue whale.
In the water.
I swear there was a blue whale right there. And it's so vivid, and it's so clear, and it's almost like you're tripping. You're totally tripping,
yeah.
You know? So that's, you know, as weird as it may sound, it's part of the game. You got to keep the mind in check and stay true to reality, you know, because it's easy to daze off and kind of, you know, get lost in that. You have to really force yourself to stay coherent and stick to reality. It's quite amazing.
So were you with somebody, a pacer, when you were having these hallucinations, or you just had to deal with it by yourself and talk yourself through it?
Well, yeah. So what happened here is, you know, I was lucky enough to get in on a very last minute. You know, I had completely different plans, like pretty much everybody. Then, of course, COVID hit. You know, lots of changes. I was committed to running the Kodiak 100 in Big Bear.
Yeah.
At the beginning of September. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of the fires in you know, that affected our areas, our forests.
It was right up against it, right? Like
it was
maybe
3 days prior to the start.
Yeah.
So everybody was already in town, you know, or at least most people were already in town, and you know, I trained pretty much all summer with that goal in mind, and I was excited because I moved to Big Bear, so you know, I was training on the course. There was a, you know, exceptional competition lined up, so I was excited to be part of that. And oddly, you know, unfortunately, or actually tragically, our forests were just burning so hard everywhere that you know, they had to make that call. But you know, the same, it was almost like it had to happen. The same day that they canceled the Kodiak, I got through the wait list and I got the invitation to run Moab.
Yeah.
So it was a very, you know, it just flowed into this event. I flowed into this event. So I was able to transition, you know, an extra month of training.
So it's not quite like you thought you were going to run a half marathon, but it turns out you're going to run a marathon.
Right.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around training for a 100-miler, but then you have to pivot and go, oh, well 240 is like...
You know, like, the thing is, there's only that many miles, at least personally, that's what I think. There's only that many miles you can train for in a week, you know? So it maybe the long runs could have been a little longer, stuff like that, but it worked out.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
really, like training for a 50-mile, or I'll say maybe training for a 100K versus training for a 100-miler versus maybe 120 miles. It's not that different.
Right, 240 is a big jump.
Yeah, like the longer runs, I'm sure would be longer. Maybe you would practice a little more running, sleep deprived, but outside of that, maybe not that different.
Yeah, right, exactly. The preparation, it's, you know, you condition the body to just run for hours on end. So but anyway, the reason why I said all of this is the fact that I only had a very little time to work on the logistics. So I didn't have, you know, I was lucky enough to put together a couple of people's crew. Yeah. Some great friends, Ashley Anderson and Evan Hone, which came out here with me to crew for me. But unfortunately, I didn't have, you know, enough pacers. So I ran basically 13 out of 14 sections completely by myself. And, you know, it was the first night, it was no problem, no problem at all. Although the first day was extremely hot. We felt like 90, 95 degrees, completely exposed out here in the desert. It was very challenging. The first night, no problem. It was cold, but you know, also the mind is still relatively fresh. Yeah, well, so no hallucinations there. But the second day, that's when things got interesting.
Let's go back to the beginning, because I want to hear about the mindset, your expectations going into it, what you thought you could do against you know, a field and also a distance that you've never competed in, or at least you've never finished. So let's start from the beginning. Tell me about the mindset going into it, and you know, what you were, I guess, the most nervous about or apprehensive about?
You know, I don't think I was nervous at all. That's the one thing that I was trying to work on, is like not get in my head to think about the distance, so getting overwhelmed ahead of time. So going into this, I just tried to be as open as possible to the experience, you know, just venture out there and see what happens, you know. I started off a relatively good pace, you know. I think I did the first 100 miler in about 20 hours and a half. And then kind of try to manage my energy levels. So there was no expectation, there was no, you know, I didn't have any, you know, nervous, you know, feelings going into it. So that kind of allowed me to live fully in the moment in a way, if you know, if we can say that. And when you do that, you know, you stay present and you take care of the things you need to take care of. Because going this distance is very much like I wouldn't say very much, but maybe 100% self-management.
Yeah.
You know, just keeping up your energy levels, hydration, nutrition, keeping the mind in tune, try not to get ahead.
Yeah. Because,
you know, you're like, there's been stretches at 30, 40, 50 miles into the race where I was like, you know, this is serious, you know. It's like I'm already grinding and I still have 210 miles to go. You know, that can like mess with you. Can mess with you, yeah. And so, you know, it's been an incredible experience, because again, I never pushed that far.
Yeah. And
seeing that it's just a matter of consistency and perseverance and, you know, resilience, if you will. It's that's ultimately what fascinated me in the first place about ultra running, you know.
But beyond exploring your capabilities in terms of the distance and terrain, you're also obviously a very capable runner, very competitive runner, an elite runner. So you have that duality of, oh my God, I have the self-management, everything that comes with trying to run 240 miles, but also you're competing with the elite field. So maybe you can take us through that mindset and how the first several miles played out.
Definitely. Well, I gotta tell you, my philosophy is very much not competition driven. Mm-hmm. So although I appreciate competition, because it's a great way to push yourself, to push each other, but going in race, like even 100 milers, I almost never focus on who's on the starting line, just for the fact that, you know, so much can happen in a day.
Yeah.
So much more can happen in 2 days and a half. So, you know, there's only one thing that I control, and it's myself. If you do it diligently.
Yeah.
I cannot control how other people train. I cannot control how other people perform. So, you know, my approach is always focus on doing the best that I can. And so, you know, doing the best that I can at every given moment, hopefully will allow me to get first at the finish line. And if he doesn't, you know, kudos to whoever did the best job out there.
Yeah, but strategically, I think the smart play is to always work with other people, even your competitors.
Absolutely, especially like, you know, there's a funny episode, if you like, we can go through it.
Yeah, sure.
Through the race. You know, of course, I love company. Of course, I enjoy the solitude when you're out there, but, you know, it's great to share the journey. If you can, you know, if you happen to be in the same, almost about the same position, keeping the same pace, why not spin off of each other? Because of course, you know, we all know in ultra running, we have all those highs and lows.
Sure.
Highs and lows, you have that roller coaster. So, you know, when you feel good, maybe I feel bad, you can push me. When I feel good and you feel bad, maybe I can push you and kind of help each other out. So, you know, I went into the race, again, not thinking about competition, or at least not at the beginning. You know, if I feel that we are 210 miles in and we have a chance of going for the win, then we can decide if we want to go for it. I understand, but, you know, it's 2 days and a half of running. That's a lot of time out there. So it's too much stress if you think about it. Or at least, you know, that's my approach. That's my mindset. And so anyway, long story short, this is what happened in the race. We start off and I found myself in the front. Not necessarily because I wanted to, but I just cracked into my pace, and I started breaking into a comfortable pace that I could keep for, you know,
2.5 days
for
apparently.
exactly for as long as that, you know,
Yeah.
for an extensive period of time. And you know, I found myself in the lead, and I got to pretty much right off town. I was in the front, and I pretty much stayed there. I didn't see anybody until probably 30 miles in, and that's when I started getting into stations. And then there was the second place person, which was David Goggins, which will always come in.
I'm sorry, David who? What was
David
the last name?
Goggins.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Okay, maybe you cut that. Like, no. So, you know, we started getting into this rhythm where I would get into the station, and he would be coming in as I was leaving.
Yeah.
So, getting to the station, refueling, getting my pack on my shoulders. He's coming in. I'm taking off. Getting to the next station, same thing. So this goes on pretty much the whole first day. And about 50, 60 miles into the race, we started getting already towards the, you know, sun is about to go down, evening is approaching. And, you know, I'm like, you are about 5-10 minutes behind. It's getting dark. Why not, you know, I'm like, I'm gonna slow down a minute. I'm gonna let him catch up. And hopefully, you know, we can team up and make it through the night together. Because, again, I enjoy the company, and we can help each other out. So we do, you know, he comes through, you know, we greet each other. We had the headlamps on, and we daze into, you know, we venture into the night. We got lost a couple of times. We, you know, we help each other out, navigating, getting back on course. And then we got to the 72-miler checkpoint. That's when you first get your pacers, and the first time you see your crew in the race.
You don't see your crew until 72 miles in?
Until 72 miles in, yeah.
Oh, man.
So that's a big stretch to do by yourself.
Yeah.
And again, I had no pacers, no crew, and it was great to see a familiar face at that point.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, we got out of the station, and we keep moving forward.
By the way, leading up to mile 72, were you guys conversing much outside of helping each other navigate?
We were like, I think I was talking more, although I like try to stay focused. You know, I like, it's good to even just run next to each other. We don't need to talk.
Right.
You know, it's just a sense of energy. Exactly.
Purpose, yeah.
And so, you know, there were like a few chats, you know, there was a little chat here and there. We were talking about a few things, but no great conversation. And that was fine. So we got out of the station. We head in again we're in the middle of the night, and
he picked up a pacer. He did
pick up a pacer. I was again by myself. So even there, I'm like, even better. You know, we have one more person. I team up. So the three of us, we're moving along, and I let him dictate the pace.
Yeah.
I was comfortable. So I'm like, I just want to have company.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I was comfortable with the pace, and I'm like, you do you, and I'll just stick around.
Yeah.
So when he was running, I was running. When he was taking a break, walking, I would walk, and I pretty much match this pattern, right?
And you thought it was understood, the shared.
I thought it was pretty clear that it was just like, we are 70 miles, 75 miles, 80 miles into the race. I'm not thinking about the finish line, the win, or the competition. Like, as I said, if we find ourselves together 210 miles in, then we can talk about, you know, sprinting to the finish line. But we are a third of a race that's gonna last 2.5 days.
Right.
I'm not gonna fight you to race you to finish.
Yeah.
You know,
you're not one-stepping each other at this point.
That was my perspective, at least. So we got into this pattern, right? Walk, run, whatever. And I could kind of anticipate when he would start running, because I could see like he would do this movement with his arms.
Yeah.
So as soon as at the first step that he ran, I would run with him. The first step that he walked, I would walk with him.
Were they talking much?
They were kind of talking when like a little bit behind me or in front of me, but never behind.
So there was no shared.
There was no shared energy there,
okay.
and that's something that kind of, you know. I don't know, it was unfortunate, but you know, everyone is different, and I respect you know, whichever mindset. But one thing that threw me off is that, you know, at some point, we were walking, and he starts to pick up running once again, and as soon as he moves the first step, I'm there running. And again, I'm not messing with him.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it to be together. And dude, he flipped. Like, he snapped. He started yelling at me. Like, he went like, come on, man, you should know your worth. You run your race. Like, you run your fucking race. I started swearing and shit. I'm like, it just came out of nowhere, you know what I mean? Like, we're how we here, sharing an amazing adventure, sharing an amazing experience. Like, it's so necessary in my opinion. So that kind of threw me off, and I was like, you know what? If I don't need that energy, so I just took off, and I never seen him again.
Man. Did you see him in when he finished? Did you guys ever have a conversation about this?
No, I stuck around at the finish line for a little while, but I think it came through maybe a couple of hours later. Yeah. So I was a bit too tired, you know. It's not, you know, if it's a 50K or 50 mile, I gladly hang out the rest of the day, but after 240 miles, no sleep, like the only thing I wanted was to shut my eyes, you know, so.
Well, you're a super nice guy, and you're a super classy guy and class act. When he did that, when he snapped at you, was there anything in your brain, in your egoic brain, that triggered and said, "All right, well, fuck this guy. I'm gonna beat him"?
Well, you know, it's like a bittersweet situation there, because, you know, when I first got into ultra running, back in the days, you know, he was like somewhat of an inspiration, you know. It's like one of those guys you look up to, and then of course, you know, in the recent years, he became such a celebrity. Yeah. And but just coming off like that, I think it's, and I understand, you know, he's that character, whatever, you know, the tough guy, but I think it's, you know, there should be a little bit more respect when it comes to that. And it can be like, you know, it could have been a simple, and again, that's me, but it could have been a simple, look, I want to be by myself. Yeah. Just go ahead or just stay behind. And I totally respect that. And I told him right away, I'm like, we can stick around if you like. If you don't, just let me know.
You told him this?
Oh, right away.
Yeah.
When we first when he first approached me at 75 miles, 80 miles in. Yeah. So, you know, it kind of threw me off the way he came at me. I'm like, very much unnecessary, you know. I hate drama, you know. I'm a very easy, happy guy. Yeah. And so I'm like, just let me know, you know, it's no big deal. Yeah. So just coming off like that kind of spoiled the whole thing.
Well, let's focus on your race then, because you know, we're still talking about miles and miles to go. When did things start to get hard for you?
So as I said, the first day and first night, they were like just great. I mean, of course, you know, you have a lot of highs and lows, but very much under control.
Were you at least taking caffeine, by the way? If you're not, before going to sleep?
I took a couple 100 milligrams over the first night. Okay. Through 2 gels. Yeah. So I had like 2, you know, just a couple of gels, 100 milligrams each, so 200 for the whole night, which is not too much. The second day, again, it was hard because of the heat, but I was still pretty, you know, the mind was still clear. I was still very much in focus.
Yeah. But we're talking big gaps between aid stations, right?
We're talking like 20 mile or plus sometimes between stations. So it was hard also to stay focused on the, you know, on the timing, you know, in terms of nutrition, hydration, all of that. Yeah. And kind of reminding yourself of stay on top of it for so many hours on end. And the things started kind of getting out of control probably around 150, 160 miles in. I don't want to say out of control, but more, you know, it started getting more like in a haze, you know. It was like, sometimes I would be running, I'm like, am I still running? Like, am I still out here? Is this a dream? Am I lost in this dream? Like, is this ever gonna end? Like, I don't remember my life before this, you know? It was that intense. And then the second night came, and man, that was a trip. Like, started hallucinating big time. And around that time, I started, early in the second night, I started a big climb. Because when you have about 170, 180 miles into your legs, you go through the major climb. which is about 10,000 feet of elevation, 10,000 feet, you know, of gain over the next 25, 30 miles. So it's not too much, but you know, with 180 miles on your legs, that's pretty intense. And so, you know, started getting higher elevation, started getting on steep terrain, started getting on very technical terrain, and the exhaustion, tiredness, all of that stuff kicked in. I started seeing gnomes and giraffes in the forest. I started seeing people that weren't there. I mean, at some point I was like, I sat down for a minute in the forest, like almost in despair. I'm like, this is not real. Like this is too much.
Were they shapes of like trees or rocks that turned into gnomes, or was it just nothing and there was?
Yeah, no. It was mostly trees.
Yeah.
Trees and rocks that would transform into things. Yeah. And you know, it's funny because I told you just you know a little while ago. It's, you know, you hear about these stories, but you know when you sign up, you're like, whatever. You know, it's like. But then it's real.
Yeah,
and it's
you got to go through it to
exactly
really
when you experience it. You're like, oh boy, like it's not BS. This is like legit. Like I see that. I mean, like it's right there.
Yeah.
But then you touch it and you're like, oh no, wait, this is not a person.
So you know, Courtney Dauwalter famously, I think, hallucinated a leopard in a hammock. And she
I didn't know that.
And she ended up turning it into a t-shirt, so maybe there's a t-shirt line for you. We should just create a t-shirt line for anybody who has these bizarre hallucinations.
I like
and just turn
idea.
them into a clothing line.
A visual project, yes.
Exactly. But you did have Evan and Ashley for a little bit at a time, right?
Yeah.
When did that come? So sorry people, camera shut off. We're gonna pick the story up when Evan picked you up as your pacer.
Yeah.
In the second night, was it?
It was towards the end of the second night in a very technical spot, coming down La Salle Mountains, and you're approaching basically the highest point of the race, about 10:5. It's freezing cold, middle of the night, hallucinations going on, you know, very delusional, and it was like such a good sight to see Evan's light coming up towards me, because thankfully, you know, they were very aware of my, you know, movements. They were tracking me down, and they saw that I was kind of getting sluggish and kind of getting lost too at some points, because it was very treacherous navigation at that point.
There was some tampering with the course markers.
There was quite a bit of there was some markings that were completely messed with, and you know, I got a cut off course, and at some point, you know, there had been good stretches where I was just running with a phone in my hand to kind of pick up the track of the GPS.
Yeah.
You know? So of course that takes its time, but you know, it was such a good sight to see Evan's light coming up, and you know, at that point I'm like, is that hallucination as well, or is it real? And thankfully he was there, and you know, he kind of picked me up, and that kind of lifted up the spirit, and just being able to follow his footsteps and not think about where to go, not think about pace, just getting the rhythm and follow the pacer is such a help. And so, you know, we picked up the pace quite a bit, and we started opening up some decent ground. We hit Geyser Pass. It was bitter cold, like so cold at that point, and the sun was just coming out.
What are we talking, like 30 degrees?
I would say it was like mid-20s probably.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Like below freezing for sure. And the same day, just a few hours later, the storm hit. It was completely white out. Yeah. So I dodged that by like a few hours. But so yeah, I refueled at Geyser Pass station, which is pretty much the second to last station. And at that point, Evan was supposed to pace me, which he did, and you know, we got in an amazing rhythm. I felt so good at that point. You know, the sun came up, you know, rejuvenating the spirit. You got like almost like a reset. You know, it's a whole new day. You know, so we start hitting the downhill, and I don't know, I just broke into such a good clip. I felt good to open up the stride. I even dropped Evan. Started running like 6:37 minute mile after 210 miles of running, which is absurd. You know, I would never believed it if you told me, but it felt right at that moment. It felt good. At that point, I was also very much inspired by the fact that we were on course, or like on record pace.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you get that extra boost, right? Problem is, you know, sometimes you might push a little too far and go over the edge, and that's probably what I did. On the following uphill, just pushing pretty hard. I was like power hiking with the poles. I was pushing as hard as I could, and on a spin off of on a rock, I just feel my Achilles kind of not necessarily pop, but like tear. Feel like a sharp pinch, and that, you know, that made me jump, almost like I got bit by something, and it kind of scared me right away, because I was like, "Ow!" Like that can be like, you know, a pretty bad situation right now, because, you know, if you snap an Achilles, you're not gonna be able to move forward. And so I kind of make a hobble to the top, and I start running down. Couldn't run, so we start hiking for about 5 miles all the way to the road. When you connect to the Moab road, and you take it towards the last section. And man, I got to this point where I'm like, I could barely walk, and then we're like 215 miles into the race. I'm like, how am I gonna finish the next, you know, almost 50K? That's, you know,
still crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's only, you know, you are 250 miles in. There's only 25, 30 miles to go. It's right there, but it's still 50K. Yeah. You know, it's still like a long, you know, stretch. So I started getting, you know, pretty. You know, in a pretty dark spot. You know.
So that was right around the time that Evan shared a photo of you laying on the side of the road around mile 215.
Classic.
Yeah, you were just like
classic
right there in the middle of the road.
right there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was a moment of complete despair. You know, we come down at the fire road. We hit the main road, which you kind of track for about a mile before getting back into the trail. And we get into the road, and I'm like, I just, you know, I was so down at that point, so demotivated. I'm like, I just need a second. So I just laid on the ground. I held my head. I was like trying to dig deep to find that one, you know, that one thing that you need to make it, to pull through, you know, to make it through. And thankfully I did. You know, at that point I got back up, and Heaven was exceptional to, you know, to pick me up and kind of stay positive and cheer me on and kind of push me through. And we actually broke into a great rhythm for a couple of miles, until again the pain was just too much in the Achilles, that I basically hiked the last 20 miles. Yeah. When I was at mile 220, I had about a 20-mile lead, and I was very much on a record pace. The last 20-25 miles, it was just a death march, complete crawl to the finish line. And as I said, I hiked basically every step of it, lost so much time. And then as we came out of this canyon, coming from the plateau, you have about a 3-mile drop. 3,000 feet drop, which was, I mean, you can imagine how fun that could have been.
Yeah, yeah.
And coming off of the trail, you know, it was amazing to see the crowd cheering us on, and, you know, that made me feel great, although the physical, you know, was just completely breaking down. The one thing that kind of that lit me up back again was Evan running up towards us saying, look, Goggins is catching up, you have to run, you have to pick up the pace, you can't keep moving like that. Because I was walking like 1.5 miles an hour.
Yeah. I remember seeing you on the tracker and refreshing the updates, and it's like something must be wrong.
Yeah,
it's not moving
the Achilles was not allowing me to move any further. Like even walking 2 miles an hour was painful. And get out on the road, get out on this, you know, bike path alongside the Colorado River, which is just, you know, stunning at that point. You know, so after so much desert, to see the water, it's such a sight. And so I was like, you know what, again, one more time, override, you know, push the button and just keep moving. So I picked up the pace and I started running again. The last 3-4 miles coming into town have been probably the most painful I've ever felt. But, you know, I very much always try to take it back to meditation and to the approach that I think that, you know, in what we do, this is a Buddhist saying, you know, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Yeah. So, you know, go through the pain, accept it for what it is. It's part of the journey, and I made a commitment to finish, and so we brought it, you know, to an amazing end. We finished no matter what, and that was And that was, you know, that was part of what I think ultra running embodies, you know, or at least what ultra running inspired me since the very beginning. What I found is so fascinating is the fact that when you reach that breaking point, you always find out that you can go past it, you can go beyond. And as of right now, I still haven't found the limit. So that's as inspiring and motivating as it can get.
Yeah, man, you definitely take on the big challenges that are out there. I think, you know, beyond the 50 milers and the 50Ks, you like the 100 plus, you love running in the Yukon, you love running in Badwater, and now 200-mile races, 240-mile races in the middle of this beautiful national park. Is it safe to say you got the bug for the 200 plus miles, the really big guys?
Definitely, definitely.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Come on,
yeah.
Come on. It's a given. It's, you know, I think it's part of the spirit of what we do. You know, it's a search for the next search for what's possible. You know, I think we all share a very adventurous spirit in this community, and so it's always finding out what is possible next. So we understand. I think, you know, Candace uses the hashtag 200 is the new 100, and I truly believe that. Let's say in the philosophy of what it represents.
Yeah.
You know, back in the 80s or 90s, you have the marathon, inspiring people to push themselves. Then some few marathoners decide to push to the 100 milers. And for the last 2-3 decades, those have been the staple. And now we have the next step. So it's always like, you know.
Well, it's all about mindset, right? I think
exactly.
To relate it back to the every man and woman, I still remember when I did my first ever race, which is a half marathon.
Yeah.
And I finished it. As soon as I finished it, I said, I can't believe people do this ×2.
Yeah.
Then, of course, like a month later, when I signed up for the marathon, the 13.1 miles went by like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And because it's your focus is on something much larger, much beyond.
It's all about. In my opinion, it's all about understanding of what's possible. Because we always tend to put ourselves in boxes and limit ourselves, and not allow ourselves to act or be fully, you know, present and fully open to the experience. Not being, you know, you would just say, okay, I can go till there, and that's as far as you're gonna go, because that's the limit you set for yourself.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and again, that's the beauty of it, it's finding out that we are capable of a lot more than what we think we can.
Yeah.
And so, you know, right now, pushing to 240 is like, yeah, it's definitely an amazing limit. I know I can do it. Now I want to know what's next.
Was there anything a little extra, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but was there anything a little extra knowing, given the full context of what happened this year and the limitations we had, to now being able to, almost like an artist, be able to fully express yourself on this blank canvas that is 240 plus miles and get all of that angst and depression, or, you know, that repressed energy? Was there anything a little extra in this 2020 pandemic year?
This is probably, beside my 2018 Badwater win, which again, Badwater always represented the ultra in my since the very beginning, since I started.
Yeah, I mean, Cosman himself calls it the toughest foot race in the
world.
Well,
not necessarily, you know, following the taglines, but in terms of what he represented, that was always the staple for me. But yeah. This is probably one of the most meaningful, you know, accomplishment I've ever achieved, and it's probably because of what it represented in this specific time of our lives, in this specific moments that we're living of our existence. You know, we've been caged, we've been separated, we've been, you know, all the things we haven't been able to enjoy the things that we love to do. You know, we haven't been able to travel, to explore our parks. We haven't been able to race, to meet our community, spend time together, cheer, and, you know, do what we love. And so being able to come here and get that, it was very special, very, very meaningful. The race in itself was very profound, because it's, you know, I always take it down to a spiritual journey. but bringing it back to what the race represented, I think it's about coming together, you know. All the hard work is done in the trainings. Race is always the celebration, in my opinion. You know, you come to the party, and then, you know, whoever wins, but it's a celebration of the passion for the outdoors and pushing our bodies, pushing ourselves to the limits.
Yeah, and voluntary suffering, right?
We pay for it.
We pay to suffer. We pay to break ourselves down, to rebuild ourselves and come out of the other end a lot stronger. I think that's why I can only speak for myself and a handful of others, but I feel like ultra running is so meaningful on so many aspects, but in particular the mental aspect. You know, being able to...
It's all there, man.
Yeah, it's all there.
It's all there.
It's fully linear and definitely, you know, like it's applicable to other aspects of our lives. Michele, honestly, like this race, this win could not have happened to a nicer, better guy. Super proud of you. I enjoyed tracking you on the tiny dot on a computer. And I don't know, maybe you can take us out with some of the fancy Italian. Do you have anything you want to say to your Italian audience?
Grazie davvero di cuore a tutti quelli che mi hanno seguito da casa. È stato un viaggio incredibile, è stato un viaggio di un'intensità che devo ancora mettere in parole, però ringrazio di cuore davvero tutti quelli che ci hanno seguito in questi giorni e spero tanto di poterci rivedere nel nostro bel paese presto. Un salutone a tutti.
Come on, you could have been reading IKEA instructions for all I know, and
exactly.
It still comes off beautifully, man. Congratulations again, buddy, man.
Thanks so much, brother.